going on, YouTube? What is going on, Kansas City? And what is going on, everybody? And welcome to the Beat of KC. Ladies and gentlemen, if you guys do not recognize this face, then click off now. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that right now. This is Josh Kaiser. Ladies and gentlemen, he's going into the Hall of Fame. He retired recently from Clearing Waivers podcast, and he's also retired from writing. He's actually being nominated for this next Hall of Fame. I'm telling you what. Josh, what is going on, my friend?
I think everybody left. Nobody would recognize my face. I think nobody's listening at this point. But after that intro, man, Hall of Fame status. I mean, give me the jacket and let's roll. I'm ready to roll, baby.
Oh yeah, we got a lot to talk about. Most definitely in this episode. I had to have you on. There is literally one person I wanted to have on when I found out we were going to get close to the trade deadlines. That was you, man. Seriously. So before we dive into this, let everybody know again where they can find you, so they can give you, the one person that's watching right now can give you that subscription on your Twitter account.
It's at Josh Kaiser 40. That's the KEISER version of Kaiser. That's basically where I'm at on Twitter. Not really messing with Instagram. So if you want my spicy takes and my stupid tomfoolery, then it's probably on Twitter. Is about the only place you can find me. So come on over, join the party. It's a lot of fun.
There it is. There it is. So we are going to be talking a lot of baseball today. And, obviously the trade deadline has come and gone. And this was by far probably the most intense trade deadline I can remember in a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like anytime, not only was I refreshing Twitter, but I was also refreshing MLB trade rumors. And it was like constant. It got to the point for those guys where they were just like, we'll update later. Here's the headline.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts on just the overall experience of yesterday, really, and today as the trade deadline ended?
I mean, I usually get a pretty good high from trade deadlines, and usually there's maybe 3 or 4 big, trades, and usually there's one that's out of nowhere. You're like, oh, that's crazy town. So not only did you get that amped up to like a 15, you also had NFL training camp rolling through. So my feed was just packed with Chiefs updates. Everybody wanting to talk about Nick Bolton bat down passes and Creed Humphrey can't snap a ball anymore, apparently. And then you threw Olympic updates on top of it. And the last 3 days have just been, for someone that has retired from the content game, it just makes you a little bit thirstier. Be like, man, there's some real good content in there. There's a real good vein of content that you could tap into. So I'll leave that to the professionals like yourself anymore, and look forward to what you guys have to say at this point. But man, keeping up with all of that stuff, and then you get like a sprinkled NBA draft in there on top of it, you're just like head spinning. Nobody talked to me. It's there's no way you're gonna have my attention because Twitter's got me at the moment.
That's what was crazy is, I was literally sitting there and just looking at everything because Westbrook got traded yesterday.
Yeah.
All of baseball was going on. Like you said, the NBA draft was going on. I mean, the Olympics, you're trying to keep up with. I mean, it was honestly like, I'm zoned in tonight. I'm taking the night off and I'm just focusing on sports. And it was, man, it was worth it for sure.
Yeah.
So before we dive into the real trade deadline, I do want to ask you, I made a couple trades. The biggest one that I'm excited to ask you about is, this is my fantasy baseball team. I unfortunately am 7-9, and I'm probably not going to make the playoffs. So I decided to make a trade for the future.
Yeah.
This first one is going to be involving Aaron Judge. Now, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are watching, this is a very, and I mean this like, it's crazy. So it's a true, like, legitimate general manager type thing. So I'm running a baseball team here where there's salaries, there's trades, there's years. I mean, it's there. So I traded Aaron Judge. He's currently, I believe, I'd have to click on it, but it's pretty low end for probably what he's valued at. And I also traded a first round pick. So we get 5 total rounds. And so I trade him a first round pick for next year's draft. In return, I get a 2 year later, so 2023 second round pick, Nolan Gorman. I think it's Derek. Is it Derek Waters from the
Drew
Atlanta
Waters,
Braves?
I think. Yep.
Drew Waters, yes, Drew Waters. Excuse me. And Adalberto Mondesi. So I was excited.
You're sucking me in here. This is a trap. I can smell the bait. This is a trap.
So I'm realizing Aaron Judge is a monster, and I'm not going to discredit that. How this system works is he really was carrying a chunk. So I gave up Aaron Judge, got Nolan Gorman, who I'm really excited about. I was
Yeah.
really excited him coming out.
Hmm.
Um, and then obviously Drew Waters is going to be special, I think, for the Braves.
Hmm.
Um, uh, the one that I had to throw in there, but I'm still kind of on edge, and that's the reason why I'm asking you, is because of Mondesi.
Right.
Um, what are your thoughts on the trade?
Well, my first question is, what's the story on these draft picks? Like, what's the draft like? What are you drafting? Who are you drafting?
So it'll be next year's draft. So honestly, anybody, it
That's
all
still
depends
out
on
there.
where. So he'll be getting my draft pick based on where I finish in the entire all of our league.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of in the middle of the pack towards a little bit more towards the top. So it's not like he's going to be getting, I would say probably where the Royals would be picking ideally next year if they, kind of what we're thinking for where they're going to be at.
Yep.
So he could
And
get, I
you're
mean, he
just
could get
you're just
somebody.
picking whoever's left in the waiver wire. Nobody's guys that nobody's dealt with yet, right?
Well, so this is actually a true minor league draft. So he'll be
Okay.
getting like guys from next year that are coming out in the draft.
Mm. Well, I mean, just in general, I also like Gorman. I think he could be good. My only concern about that is when he'll be ready, and you might be waiting on him for a year or two, especially if, depending on what happens with the Arenado situation. They're locked up in Goldie at first and Arenado at third, at least for a couple seasons, depending on if Arenado takes that opt out. I believe he has after a couple seasons, maybe after next year, actually. So that's going to be something to watch with him. And then Waters, I also really like. I think he could be definitely an all around. And you to throw him into that nasty, nasty Baby Rays lineup, that could be a big category filler for sure. And then Mondesi, honestly, Judge is hurt just about as much as Mondesi is anymore, right?
I
He's
mean,
hurt
yeah.
so often, but probably not as often. We're talking about Mondesi here, so probably not as often. But when both of those dudes are healthy, they're probably producing on a similar level. And Judge is not necessarily known for an average, so he's putting up ribbies and he's putting up home runs. So depending on what category you're rolling with, I can see Mondesi providing pretty good value just on the stolen bases side, and then whatever you're getting on the homer side or the RBI side or the run side, whatever your categories are in that league. I could see the Mondesi Judge thing kind of canceling each other out, which means you just got Gorman and Waters in a third, what do you say, a third round pick in 2023 for a first, and that's
Hmm.
not too shabby at that point. So I think it's at least even, and there's a little bit of risk on your side of it, but you're not playing fantasy unless you're taking risks.
I like to hear that. I like to hear that. So I did make one more, and this one will be a little bit quicker. So Bryce Harper, 1 year deal, can't be tagged, can't be basically has to hit free agent. I literally traded him for a rental. And in return, I got Christian Pache from the Braves.
Ooh, I love me some. Is it Pache? Pache?
That's how I pronounce it.
I just love it. I love it in either way. Uh, with that dude, it seems like he's more. I think he's got a little bit of swing and miss, if I'm recalling correctly. But he is fast. And again,
Yes.
you put him in that lineup. You throw him out there in an outfield with Acuna and Drew Waters potentially at that point. Even if he's hitting at the bottom of the lineup, that's not nothing. So if you throw him and then Mondesi also in that, you know, you got some stolen bases coming your way for sure. But Harper's Harper, baby. I don't feel as good. He's a rental, so Pache is a pretty good return for a rental, especially if you're not in it. So I mean, that's not a bad trade at all things considered. You made some other team probably a super team on top of it. Are
I
you
did.
did you haul to the Yankees at this point? Is that where we're is someone rocking a Judge, Stanton, Rizzo, and Gallo lineup now?
Well, it's funny you say that. So last year, I actually had Stanton and Judge, and then I had Harper, all three.
Ooh.
But how this specific fantasy baseball league works is it's really driven on pitching.
Mm,
Because if your pitcher does terrible, you actually get negative points, and
oof.
it'll actually drive you down. And that happens a lot more often than not. But if they're successful, then you'll get a decent amount of points. Where a hitter who may have a home run in a double type night with 3 RBIs may only get you 8,
Yeah.
where a pitcher who goes out and shoves for even just 6 to 7 Ks is going to get you anywhere from 18 to about 20 points. So
Yep.
it's really focusing on the pitching aspect.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind
Yeah.
of, this one's definitely different. So I was super
Yeah.
excited to get those guys. And like, I'm gonna have a ton of cap space next year. I could easily go back and get my favorite player in all of baseball in Bryce Harper. So
Absolutely.
I definitely gave him up for a rental. It definitely hurt. I think I hit decline about 3 times before I finally accepted it, just because that's my guy. So,
When I'm going into those things, I always this is a coin a term my brother coined is like the audible test. Like say it out loud to yourself and see how it feels. And that I mean that it really does help you in some of those situations. And you can apply that to a lot of things like pizza order or Andy Reid play calling or any of these things can just be like, just say it out loud. Does this make sense after you say that? No? Okay. Probably good to hit the decline option. So if you do that, I feel I'm a big believer in that. So free advice for any of those fantasy players out there.
there it is. And that leads me directly into the Kansas City Royals trade deadline stuff, because I feel like Dayton Moore hit the decline button a few times in his fantasy line trades, because what did we do? Like, we gave up Danny Duffy and Jorge Soler. Um, you know, I completely understand, and this is something we're going to dive into, because I can understand a little bit of what he's trying to accomplish, and saying that we're going to be competitive. But I still feel, even outside of, we'll just say, Whit Merrifield, and we'll say even just a few of the other guys, you
Mm-hmm.
still have Mike Minor, who I feel is clogging up the starting pitching rotation that could have been dealt.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Barlow is a pretty big staple in your bullpen, that's something that we've been known to replace on this Kansas City Royals, baseball team. What are your thoughts, really, just kind of from an overall, how Dayton handled this trade deadline?
Well, it was not very exciting. They really haven't been for the last 3 years, and that sucks. As a Royals fan, as anybody that is kind of wanting this franchise to get off the fence, it seems to be a very, I guess, big symbol of this that they just cannot commit one side or the other. They don't want to do either one. They want to build for the future, and they also want to win right now, and that's fine. But ever since this kind of became a strategy, it's been very heavily criticized and fairly because of that. Is like that's never successful, and we're kind of seeing what happens to it right now as it happens in real time. It's not very fun trade deadline, and it's also leaves everybody questioning like the the baseball acumen of the front office at this point, because what more do you need to see out of the last 3 seasons of 100 plus or 98 plus pace losses to think that maybe this isn't working, maybe we need to go back to the drawing board. And they've revamped the development of the pitching system as well as the bats, and that's fine. And I hope that all works out. And we can latch on to hope as Royals fans because it's the best thing we do. But it's just it leaves you wondering what's the plan. What's the plan here? What's the plan here, Dayton? Is it the same we've seen? Because if that's the case, then you are the definition of insane. If you keep doing the same thing, hoping it's a different outcome, you are insane. That is the
Yeah.
definition of insanity. So it's tough to see them not really commit to it, but at the same time, it kind of leaves you a little bit optimistic. And bright side, Dayton Moore did give us two things. He did gift us two things. He gave us a Danny Duffy funeral. He with it being a player to be named later, there was nobody complaining about the package or the players that came, or why are we getting rid of one of our best players and blah blah blah. And on this side is like, how are we not getting more for a great proven starter veteran and a girl house, blah blah blah. We got to sit here and wax poetic about our memories of Danny Duffy, who's one of my all-time favorite Royals of all
Yes.
time. So to be able to get on social media, see all the positivity that Danny Duffy has spread. He's got some warts, but who the hell doesn't at this point? And it was just, that's one gift that Dayton Moore gave us. The other gift that he gave us is anybody who was muttering the phrase Jorge Soler is in the lineup to bolster his trade value. And no, is a super lottery ticket, a very, you know, unlikely to work out arm that came over in a trade, but damn it, he got traded and he bolstered that trade value. So suck it, all you haters out there.
Man, I tell you, I was I wanted anything to. I wouldn't care what it was in return if Jorge Soler would have been traded. And I really honestly I hate to be like that because
Sure.
I'm sure you hear the good stuff about him. You really do. Witt came out and said that Jorge Soler is a great teammate, a
Mhm.
great individual, but that's not what we're about. We're about producing and being fans and enjoying the product that's on the field. And he produced 1 year out of his entire thing. And I can't imagine what the Braves are even seeing in Jorge Soler. Why I wonder if Dayton's like, hey, you owe me a favor. Take this guy, please.
You got a
That's the
live
only
arm
thing.
you can throw me? You got a live arm, a 23-year-old in high A that you can throw my way?
Yeah, because you and I both just kind of went through Pache, however you say his name, is
Mhm.
right there. Drew Waters is right there. Both of them have really kind of tickled the Major League Baseball roster.
Yeah.
And then you're telling me that they're going to plug in Jorge Soler in the right field.
Mhm.
I don't see that happening. I just don't see that happening. And I mean, I could be crazy. I just do not see that happening. So thank you, Atlanta Braves, for taking him. But in return, we get Lucius Fox and not Oliveris.
Yeah.
Blows me away.
I
I mean, maybe that guy's still car sick from all the traveling he's been doing. So,
The only
uh,
explanation I could give you on that, and my brother and I have talked about this a couple times, is obviously the bat is undeniable at this point. It's speaking for itself. He's banging down the door with that bat. There's got to be questions about his defense at this point. Gotta be. That's the only explanation in my head. I mean, he didn't have the best defensive metrics when he got time in the majors last season. So I wonder if that's a little bit, but at this point, that's the only thing that I could really point to and be like, okay, Dayton Moore loves his outfield defense. It's that he's always been that way. So that's my only theory about that. But it is hilarious to see meltdowns on Twitter because Eddie Olivares is not called up, and we get to see Lucius Fox in that lineup.
I tell you, my only counteraction to that is the fact that we were sticking Jorge Soler out there. We've seen Hunter Dozier out there, and
Yep.
we've seen Ryan O'Hearn out there.
Hmm.
So I can't
Good point.
can't think to me that his defense is worse
Yep.
than those. But
Valid point.
it is what it is. I completely get that aspect, and I think I like where we're headed. Me personally, I'm an optimistic person, especially when it comes to how we run things. I was optimistic in 13, 14, and 15.
Hmm.
And that's just the way I've always been. I've always been that wishful guy. Like even though we've had 100 losses consecutive, I'm like, well, maybe next year I'm that guy. So maybe I
we're
should
building
stop.
we're building the ships. I'm the same boat. We're building the ships pre-spring training so that there's plenty of room for people to gather on it while they're winning Arizona. And then about June, we want to make sure people have plenty of room to make those leaping run and jumps off of the ship. So it's really up to us to keep building a ship every year because one day, baby, that's going to be a rocket ship.
I'm telling you that it did happen, and we were
It
like,
did.
told you guys.
Uh-huh.
But that kind of leads me to this next thing before we really try dive into the full on trade deadline.
Yeah.
So I was kind of thinking 2022, and that's kind of been the discussion is the fact that we've heard multiple times that we're going to compete in 2022.
Mhm.
So I've kind of manufactured a defensive lineup, and I'm going to kind of go into it. I'm going to need your help in some spots. I kind of mentioned that to you before we started this.
Yeah.
So catcher is 100% a lockdown, but we understand MJ Melendez is right there as well.
Mhm.
So that's pretty good right there.
Yep.
Now, Santana didn't go anywhere, and I'm okay with that. I was 100% fine with that. Even though if he would have got traded, I would have been like, okay, it makes sense. But he stayed. I'm okay with that. So I got him plugged in at the DH spot next year.
Yep. I think that's fair.
Nick Prado, hopefully, gets the call up. We can see him playing platinum glove first base because that's really a mirror image of Eric Hosmer in that aspect.
Yep.
So I'm hoping Prado is playing there at first. If not, he's not quite there yet. Then we'll see Santana there again.
Yeah.
Now, this is where I start to I'm wondering.
Hmm.
I'll admit it. I've admitted it to on social media, and I'll admit it to you. Nicky Lopez has impressed me beyond anything I've ever imagined this year,
Hmm.
and I'm super pumped that he's doing what he's doing. Do you plug him in at second base next year, saying that everybody's healthy, or is that going to be Mondi?
Here's the question here, and it's very apropos to bring it up at the trade deadline because they did choose to keep Witt, obviously. So that the middle of the infield and the center field position are where you're really going into 2022 with big questions because Nicky Lopez objectively is having a better year than Whit Merrifield at the plate. He just passed him in OPS. I think he's just a couple points under him in average. That was going into the Knights game, and I know that Nicky hit a triple at least tonight, so maybe that's closer to tied up at this point. But as far as like OPS plus, runs created plus, Nicky Lopez is already having a better year than Whit Merrifield somehow. I would not have predicted it. I'm there in the same boat with you. I'm eating all the crow at this point on Nicky Lopez. But with Dayton Moore kind of stressing the defense up the middle, he wants the best combo at shortstop and second base and a good center fielder. And I think at this point, assuming everyone is healthy, I think that is Nicky Lopez at second base, Adalberto Mondesi in shortstop, and we'll see what happens in center field. I want to see where your head's at for next year in center field. We can
It's
move on there.
Well, I'll kind of show you. It's blank.
Okay. Okay.
So, um,
I've got a theory, but yeah.
because that's kind of what and the reason I left it blank because I've saw today that I think it's, and I could be wrong on the numbers, but 15 to 18 games if Bobby Witt stays down there, then that's what he would it'll almost be like a Chris Bryant situation. If he stays down there to 15 to 18,
Yep.
then his years really are set in the way they should be.
Yep.
So he's potentially not going to start in the majors next year, but we could see him pretty quickly.
Yes.
So I actually have him though starting at shortstop, but my thing is if we do roll with that, Mondi at shortstop, Nicky at second, does Witt Jr. then kick to third? And do you see him being that guy that is more movable, even though he's like our future shortstop?
Yeah. So I think at this point, in my head, I've always assumed that Mondesi would be at shortstop. I think he's more built for shortstop. Bobby Witt Jr. is a great defender and can absolutely ball out at shortstop, but he can also ball out at third base. And I would, in my head, as long as Mondesi is around, I want him at shortstop and I want Bobby Witt Jr. at third base in my head. But, it is what it is at this point. I don't think it's a bad thing to have kind of that penciled in to be like Mondi at short, Bobby Witt Jr., and Hunter Dozier in right field because inevitably Mondesi is going to get hurt. You shift Witt over to shortstop, Dozier back to third base, and you figure out what to do with right field at that point. So that's kind of where my head is at regarding that. And it wouldn't surprise me if that's kind of what Dayton's penciling in, but there's going to be a lot of questions to be answered, I think, in the next, and the fact that there's so much flexibility in these guys, potentially, that the Witts, the Bobby Witts, the Hunter Doziers, the Nicky Lopez's out there who can play multiple positions. I think it's going to be a benefit in the short term and long term at that point. So
Yeah, so I had plugged in the right field, our Olympic athlete Bubba Starling, and we'll go ahead
okay.
and we'll move back over to center field because I think he's dominating over there for the Olympics.
Uh-huh.
So I think he's earned a spot. I'm kidding, of course, but that that's where I'm kind of like I'm lost for what they're gonna do with Hunter Dozier
Mhm.
because if that truly is kind of how we're seeing the infield set up, he's not there.
Mm. Yep.
And the only other spot we've seen him play has been left for a little bit and then right field.
Mhm.
And if this is the future, I don't see him being the future of our outfield. So I'm kind of like, we paid him, I mean, a decent amount of money for a Kansas City
Right.
Royal player to just go to the bench. So
Well, I think he could be a super utility because he could also play first base if Nick Prado is not, panning out, or if there's an injury. You also have the open DH spot in theory because you don't have Soler there. Carlos Santana is probably going to be manning that a lot of the time, especially if Prado is up there. But I mean, Dozier could play first, third, corner outfield, and luckily there's plenty of outcomes to make sure that his bat is in the lineup most days. Benny being in left field for at least one more year, I still think they probably eventually extend him. Hopefully, they don't overpay him, but um, I think that they do eventually extend Benny, and he's man in left field for the foreseeable future. So, yeah, in my head, it's still center field is the big question mark. I
Okay.
think that, I mean, they still got Kyle Isbell that's kind of splitting time in Omaha in center field. He's really, really good defensively, and I think he's got a lot of potential and a lot of tools to be good on the major league level. Hasn't quite showed it yet, obviously. And then Oli Olivares is also got to be mentioned in this category as well. So somewhere in that outfield, you got Benny, Whit Merrifield, Hunter Dozier, Kyle Isbell, and Edward Olivares. Probably some combination of that on the major league roster at any given time next year, unless they make an addition. And that's kind of where my head is at. I mean, do you really want Whit Merrifield patrolling center field next season and on? He's put up decent, I mean, around average defensive metrics his career in center field, but he's only going to get slower. His legs are only
Yes.
going to get less and less, and like we said, Dayton Moore wants really good defense out there. So I'm really, that's kind of where my head is at in relation to this trade deadline and choosing it. Last time I was on here, I said I don't think they'll deal with Merrifield. Like, why would they do it now? And it's kind of because if he's still going to keep on the decline at the plate, believe it or not, he is regressing every year in the last 3 years overall. Where's he going to be at in next year and the year after that? Is he going to be part of the picture at that point? I mean, he's an absolute alpha and the leader in the locker room. So I think it's just a weird balance that I think is, his value to the Royals. I think Lesky tweeted it earlier, is like his values to the Royals is better than any value to any other team at this point. So it's
Yeah.
always going to be tricky getting, potentially trading with Merrifield. So, but at the same time, you don't really know where his defensive position is going to be moving forward.
And I think that's kind of what I mean. I feel Dayton Moore and Lonnie Goldberg would have to be a couple steps ahead, obviously,
Mhm.
and that's kind of why I was surprised in this draft because I haven't had a chance to really talk to you since the draft.
Yep.
And the way it developed, obviously, I was all for Kumar Rocker. But as it really kind of played out, if this truly was the case, why take Mazzucato when you could have potentially went and got a shortstop that you were projecting to go to center field anyways? Like, there's a few of them that are doing that. So I'm kind of questioning that. I get why they chose Mazzucato so they could lower obviously that slot, and then they can go get our two local kids and but I'm still kind of wondering if that truly is a hole that we're kind of envisioning a little bit as center
Yeah.
field. Why they wouldn't have maybe drafted that, or
I
maybe
mean,
it's just
it's
something that they feel they need to fill that immediately.
right. And maybe they just didn't have a dude that, they were comfortable pulling in. Um, I think Royals Farm Report was kind of talking about it making sense from like a wave standpoint. It's like you always got to be producing the wave. And this big wave that we've all been kind of riding the last 3 years is almost ashore. And it's time to start building the next wave.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of makes sense to me. Between Mazzucato, Caderna, and Carter Jensen. And I'm not that big on Peyton Wilson. I know Royals Farm Report really, really likes him, but I'm just not sold on him quite yet. But those dudes are all high upside, high risk guys. So,
Yeah.
I'm fine with them kind of taking the risk on them. I wish they had a better track record to point to be like, oh, I totally get that. Let's do this. Let's roll the dice. If they were the Cleveland Indians or the Tampa Bay Rays or the Los Angeles Dodgers, I'd be like, okay, great. We went
Yeah.
under slot. We got all this extra money to give, throw out to was that Lucas Tresh? Is that his name? Luca Tresh,
Yeah.
which they did end up pulling out as well. But I'd be in fully supporting that plan at that point if their development was a little bit more proven. But
Yeah.
they've made their changes, and we'll see how it all goes. They do have success stories already, and yeah, we'll just kind of have to see how that all pans out in the coming
Yeah, for
years.
sure. I mean,
I don't
I
feel
hope
great about it, but whatever.
I just hope that Dayton can see this through.
Yep.
Just because I would like to see his vision on those, at least this draft, maybe next year, because we know he's going to draft his son. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping we can at least make it to next year's draft, because I would love to see that through. And if it doesn't work out, then yeah, because I saw today there was a lot of people saying Dayton's got to go, and I'm like, no, let's pump the brakes. Let's pump the
Yeah.
brakes. Like, you got to at least develop and build. He is a small market club. Like, we're
Right.
not just going to go out there and sling trades like the Yankees, like the Dodgers. Like, we're
Yep.
just not, we can't do that, because those guys have the ability to go and throw massive amounts of money at guys and continuously build that major league roster.
Right.
Where we're building it off of our farm system and plugging some veterans in. And I
Yeah.
think people forget that because of the excitement of the trade deadline. And it's like,
100%.
that's not what we're about. So,
And
um,
if we're in this position next, this time next year, the Royals are buyers, and they've got, Jonathan Bolin, John Heasley, Alec Marsh, all these dudes that aren't necessarily cracking the rotation at this point, but they're stocking, they're building their stock, and they're ready to roll. You saw in this deadline that pitching is currency. There was
yes,
so pitchers that were traded today in the last week or so. So you really, really, saw what Dayton Moore was saying when he's talking about pitchers being currency at that point, and you can really see it in action. And to know that the Royals have potentially that top end, that you can build a great rotation, an absolute stable of arms to kind of solidify the major league levels, and then you still have a deep enough system to deal from, and to go get those huge profile dudes that you're getting someone else to eat their entire contract. And we're saying, hit the accelerator, let's go. Hit the turbo, hit the NOS on Fast and Furious, baby. Let's go. Headed to because at this point, you're gonna keep up with the Dodgers or the Yankees or any of these super teams that are just stupid
yeah,
good right now. And,
yeah,
and you look at, we were talking about the lineup for 2022, the ceiling of all those guys. Say everybody's healthy, everybody hits their ceiling, the rotation is dealing. Is that good enough to go against Scherzer, Bueller, Kershaw, Urias? I mean, just an absolute. And then the lineup for the Dodgers is just stupid. Just
yep,
it's an MLB The Show Diamond Dynasty team. I saw somebody twice. That's exactly what it is. So
yeah,
you got to feel good about that aspect of it, but there's a lot of ifs for that 2022 team to be in that position to be buyers next season. But you started to see a little bit more value for prospects kind of go up from the last few seasons, how they've been. So that was kind of good to see. If the Royals contention window is rolling open a little bit, it's good to see that prospects are a little bit more valuable than they were last few seasons. So I don't know. I'm encouraged by that. I'm looking for the silver linings at this point,
yeah.
but I mean, there's something to be seen there for sure. And I
You
agree.
know,
Dayton Moore
yeah,
does need to see at least till next year, because that's when the guys are really starting to hit, if not 2023 at that point, because that's really when you're only going to be like, okay, these guys aren't working out. You clearly don't know what you're doing.
yes,
The 14 of 15 runs were clearly, right place, right time, right person type of thing, but you clearly are not able to do this long term, and it's very hard to do. So
yeah.
that
It
that
is.
is what it is at that point.
Yeah,
So at that point, I think you got to give Dayton Moore at least a 2022, if not 2023, before you start to can people.
yeah, for sure. And I always try to like think we went against Jacob DeGrom,
Yep.
Matt Harvey,
Hmm.
Noah Syndergaard,
Hmm.
and I know I'm forgetting somebody else, but
I mean, yeah, Matz was probably part of that. Zach
Steven
Wheeler was in
Matz.
staff as well. Yeah, I'm forgetting somebody else too. But yeah, I mean that was the
Was
rotation.
Wheeler healthy there?
Probably not. I mean, rarely is Wheeler healthy. He's dealing this year though. God,
Yeah,
he's
shoving.
talking about fantasy. I got him. Woo,
Yeah,
woo.
yeah,
He's sexy.
for sure. And so I always try to think of them. So I want to read you something I read from SI MLB.
Mhm.
And I think this is incredible because you hit on it, and I just want to emphasize. So they wrote up the Dodgers should win the World Series. It says, don't mistake that declaration to mean they will. No team has repeated as champs in 2 decades. It only means they have the best team on paper. After adding Scherzer and Turner, this is incredible, man. And I had to do this. It is hard to imagine a more decorated team. There are 29 active players who have won an MVP or Cy Young award. The Dodgers have 7 of them.
That's stupid. That is the
They
dumbest thing of all the dumb things.
they have 9 players who have combined for 6 MVPs and 28 top 10 MVP finishes. And on their payroll, they have 5 pitchers who have combined for 8 Cy Youngs and 19 top 5 Cy Young finishes. That includes the disbarred Trevor
I was
Bauer,
gonna
who's
say,
paid
yeah.
administrative leave, obviously. That, I mean, somebody looked up a cheat code, punched it in all strategically like they do. And like
Yeah.
you said, this is a Diamond Dynasty. It's just, to me, man, it's incredible, and like it's also frustrating at the same time because I know the Royals try to do it in a fashion that is the right way to them.
Mhm.
You got a new ownership group and you're trying to do the best you possibly can, but then you got to compete against the likes of that. And I think,
Yeah.
man, that's just so frustrating. But that kind of leads me to this next part because I think it definitely goes well because, leading into 2022, obviously, it sounds like we're pushing for 2022.
Mhm.
And my argument today was I completely understand people are frustrated with the trade deadline not making moves. And my argument was that we're going to see the young talent come up. We're going to sprinkle in our veterans like Whit Merrifield and Salvador Perez. I think personally we can compete for the Central, make the playoffs, and then whatever happens, happens. But
Mhm.
I think that would be a start in the right direction as well. I think some people have the mindset of 14 and 15 where we made the playoffs and then we made those just magical runs the way we did all the way to the World Series.
Mhm.
Would you be against next year just kind of what we talked about, and yes, we have to play the what if game, but do you envision them competing at least for the Central with that type of lineup?
I mean, Detroit's not quite there. They're on the rise, but they're not quite there. The Indians clearly giving up. I guess what are they now? The Guardians are clearly giving up and selling and trying to make sure that they're viable for the next at least in the next 3 years or so. Twins, I mean, they don't have a very. I don't think they have a very solid farm system underneath them. They did just get a little bit stronger dealing Barrios. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never been a big believer in the Twins, period, and I don't really see them being that scary. It's always going to be the White Sox. It's going to be the White Sox for the next 5 years at
Yeah.
least. So they're really who you're going to be chasing. You get a few things to kind of fall your way. The fact that they are just running away with the Central with like Eloy Jimenez being hurt all year and Luis Robert being hurt all year is stupid. It's really, really stupid how good they still are with that riffraff of Billy Hamilton, Goodwin kind of rolling around in the
Yeah.
outfield out there, Adam Eaton, gross. They DFA'd his ass. So it was, I mean, it's just weird how good that they have been this year without those guys, showing you that they kind of still,
Mm-hmm.
even without those dudes, they're good. So they're going to be the hills you're going to have to climb, really, the ones that I'm really concerned with, and then see how the wild card kind of shapes up. So, they could be alive in the wild card or in the Central next year. I'm not really, expecting them to overtake the White Sox at this point. But who knows? Maybe they're all hitting their ceiling. They're all MVP candidates at this time next year. We'll have to see, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. But I'm just not expecting it at this point.
For sure. And see that's where as an optimist, I can see it. I think if and my argument was if we get a top 10 pitching or excuse me, top 15 pitching staff,
Hmm.
you get your guys like Daniel Lynch, he finishes out the rest of this year. Finally he figures out what Major League Baseball is all about because we saw it the other day against the Tigers at home. I mean, that dude shoved.
Yes.
And that's what we envision. He experienced potentially a great atmosphere in Toronto opening up tonight and gave up 3 runs. And really, yeah, the pitch count got high. He was getting a little squeezed, but got to experience that. So hopefully some of them
Right.
jitters are out and we see true Daniel Lynch for the rest of the year.
Tonight
And then
grinded.
obviously, go ahead.
Tonight was a grind. I mean,
Yeah.
that's actually what the tonight was. Is he still went out at 6? Quality started it. So I'm
Yes.
happy with what I've seen Daniel Lynch last two starts. I
Yeah.
wish the
And I
strikeouts were a little bit higher, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that Koar comes up and can experience a little bit of the same. If not, he's a pin piece. We know that there's a chance that that could be. So, give those guys the opportunity to then go into 2022 with the motivation and really that fire that they can do it. Because
Yeah,
I honestly think it can happen. I'm more excited about the Central, and then, you know, but you start to see some of these teams like that AL East. Anybody in that AL East except for Baltimore right now could easily make a wild card and win the division. I mean,
100%.
the Yankees go out and just dominate the trade deadline, which we're going to talk about. But I mean, good night. They are getting back to the when I was a kid
I
watching
hate it.
playoff baseball on Halloween and you just see the disgustingness of a lineup. I mean, those guys top to bottom now, their lineup is unreal.
Yep.
So, but those any of those teams could honestly do it. The Oakland Athletics somehow find a way to stay there and are
Every time, every
yeah.
year.
Yeah. And then the Mariners are coming around. So I could see it being competitive in some aspects, but I'm honed in on that Central. I think we got a shot. I
Yeah.
think we got a shot. And we'll just have to see. So I'm
Yep.
gonna remain optimistic. I'm gonna remember this because obviously this will be saved in YouTube. I'm gonna go back and reflect, and I could be completely back assword wrong, and then
Yep.
just it'd be
No,
terrible.
I've been when I was writing for Royals Review, I was always the guy that had the most wins predicted of that entire staff. Uh, the podcast we were doing, we were all half pessimist, half optimist, and my brother and I were the optimists of the group, and we can always squint to see success, and then we get just punched in the gut when they lose 100 losses again. So I'll be driving that optimism bus with you. I'll be right there with you.
I'm glad somebody's on there with me because it does
Uh-huh.
get lonely at times. It really
Oh yeah.
does.
Oh yeah.
So, but man, we're going to shift some gears. We're going to talk about the overall major league trade deadline. And the first question I wanted to ask you was, what was the one that kind of shocked you the most? The one that you maybe not necessarily saw happening, and you were like, "Ooh, okay,
The big one was, I mean, not Scherzer going to the Dodgers, but Trey Turner being involved in that.
yes,
The and really, even with the Scherzer deal, I was really kind of very interested to see what happened to his $102 million in deferred money over the next 6 seasons. I really wanted to see what happened to that money. It turns out the Nationals are going to eat all of that money. They're going to pay Max Scherzer $102 million over the next 6 seasons to pitch somewhere else. I love it. It makes me so happy. I just love it. It's just the perfect thing. I just wish it was happening to the Yankees or the Dodgers or whatever. What just hurt somebody else, not the Nationals.
yeah."
Um, but the fact that Trey Turner was involved in that deal was just wild to me. I didn't. I mean, what are the Dodgers going to do with him over the next? They've got Gavin Lux, they've got Corey Seager, and now they have Trey Turner out there. Is Seager going to get bumped to third? Trey Turner? I mean, they've got options, obviously, but it's going to be curious to see what happens to that part of it, and that's really what and that's really what made the deal for the Nationals too. That's why they got Kyber Ruiz and Josiah Gray in that deal, which were probably two of the better prospects that were dealt in this whole deadline. So I don't think that deal happens without Trey Turner getting thrown in there, which was the biggest surprise to me.
And that man, that I didn't know about the money. Holy smokes,
Yeah.
yeah, that. And it's crazy how that whole thing developed because I remember sitting there yesterday. I hit refresh, MLB trade rumors pops up, and it's like Scherzer going to San Diego, and I'm like, okay, I really like this, and
Yep.
I really do. That division is just awesome right now, and that would just make it that much better.
Hmm.
But then you never hear any more about it, and then out of the blue, it's like to the Dodgers, you're like, what the hell?
Yep.
And then on top of that, you're hearing Trey Turner's involved, and I'm like, what? For me personally, I don't know. He was a key piece of the future.
Yeah.
We saw him come through, I just don't understand why the Nationals felt like that had to happen. That's what I'm confused about. And you can't tell me that there weren't other competitors looking to get Max Scherzer. Like, I
For
just
sure.
don't know how that was the best deal possible.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I could, but what are your thoughts? Like, do you think that that honestly could have been their best deal?
Uh, yeah, it's hard to say. You're probably not getting a prospect return like they did without Trey Turner. But I don't think anybody's asking the question about Trey Turner. I'm not sure anybody has the balls outside of the Dodgers at that point, because who can touch the Dodgers at this point? Nobody. They just dominate these transactional dates
Yeah.
every damn year. So it's wild. But Trey Turner being 28 years old, I think he's a free agent after next year. Yeah. Um, so it's very strange that that got involved. But at the same time, Kybert Ruiz is supposed to be the real deal. Josiah Gray is supposed to be the real deal. And if you're the Nationals, who are clearly just hitting the reset button, they're going to give Juan Soto the world, literally, potentially. They're going to give him the Scherzer deal. You're going to pay him $102 million when he retires at 46 years old. But they're going to build around Soto at that point, which should be the foundation of that, of that team. Also Strasburg there, there's things to work out. There's things to work with around that team. But they needed to hit the hard reset button. They did that, and they needed to make sure they got some kind of foundation to start the next wave. So, uh, you know, nobody like Trey Turner, obviously a great player, and I guarantee you that was a painful time to hit the accept button on that one. But you got really good prospects out of it, and it's just you never know what those guys are going to turn into. So you got to gather up as many dice as you can in order to roll it, and hope you're hitting on some of them.
For sure, for sure. What were your thoughts when Javi Baez went to the Mets? Um, because I was kind of like divided. Like I get what they're trying to do. Obviously,
Yeah.
you want to win, but you have a struggling Lindor. You're going to force Javi to go to second. Those two are going to play up the middle, but I don't know, man. It's like when these super teams try to come together, you don't often see like the success or the end result that they're always hoping for, unless you're the
Hmm.
Dodgers. But I just don't see the Mets. I don't see the Mets really, doing what they should against that NL West because unless DeGrom's healthy, I just read a report he's out for another 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then your pitching staff outside of him is starting to become a question mark. Stroman's been there, but outside of that, Syndergaard's obviously done. And there's just some other question marks there. I don't know. Do you think that gets him over the top?
Um, it seems like it could be, but that's mainly because the rest of that division is kind of limping around, with the Braves kind of, losing Acuna for the season. They've had some injuries on that pitching staff that are taking their toll as well. And at this point, Eddie Rosario, Jacques Peterson, and Jorge Soler and Duvall are going to be roaming that outfield for the rest of the year. And I mean, that's a lot of power, a lot of pop coming in that lineup, but you need some table setters. You need the
Yeah,
Ozzy Albies, you need the Dansby Swansons. Austin Riley's having a great year. Freddie
yeah,
Freeman, always an MVP candidate extraordinaire. So they've got dudes around them, but you're not nearly as afraid of them as without Acuna in that lineup at that point.
yes,
So why not the Mets at this point? Just because they're the Mets? Sure, I'll tell. I'll happily accept that explanation, that reasoning. But at this point, like the Nats are not going to be there, the Marlins are not going to be there, the Phillies, they're not nothing. But how real are they ever at any point? With Harper, Real Muto, all those dudes are studs. But all in all, it seems like the NL East is up for grabs at this point, and the
yeah,
Mets have just as good as reasoning to win it as anybody. So why not go get Javi Baez at that point?
yeah.
My my first reaction is holy, the amount of swagger coming out of that middle infield between Baez and Lindor is going to be off the charts. And then I saw somebody posted that Amir Garrett and the Cincinnati Reds will be coming to town to play the Mets this weekend, and I cannot wait to see those two go at it again. Give me all the
Oh man,
Javi Baez and Amir Garrett's that I can handle.
He's gonna hit another nuke, and he's gonna
Oh,
row down to
row
first
that
base
boat,
and let it.
baby. Oh, I just want him. I want it all.
I love that though. I love. I've always liked Amir Garrett's fire and
Me too.
passion, and obviously Baez throws it right back. So
Yep.
yeah, man, and that's what's awesome about baseball, because then that draws the attention, that makes you want to watch it, and it's so much fun. So,
Hmm.
but man, and speaking of all that too, like, what were your thoughts with the Cubs? Because they just unloaded,
Oh yeah.
and it kind of left people thinking, like, did we really get anything in return? I mean,
Well,
you gave up Rizzo,
uh-huh.
you gave up Baez, you gave up Bryant. I mean, those were your three core pieces,
Right.
and we understand that Bryant was basically a rental. He could always come back,
Yep.
but did they really truly get in return maybe something that could be special, or are they just kind of like, we got what we could?
Well, first off, they they did what I wanted the Royals to do back in 2017. I wanted them. I was in pure chaos mode at that point. I was very much into the MLB the Show and just want all the prospects, just bring them all in. Every one of them's going to work out and this is all going to pan out. So they did what I wanted the Royals to do back in 2017. So instead of Daniel Lynch and Chris Bubich and these comp pick guys that we got, we'd be getting, the Nick Madrigals, the Cody Hoyers, the Alcantaras, the guys that they got. They sent out 9 guys. They got 12 in return. And I think that there are, according to MLB Pipeline, 6 of those dudes out of those 12 that they got are potential, current or future major league contributors at that point. So I mean, you throw that into a system with like Brendan Davis and some of these other guys that are already there, you're cooking with something at that point. And
Mm-hmm.
with with Theo Epstein leaving, kind of giving the reins off to another GM, it's kind of like a starting a new type of thing, trading for dudes that apparently he was very into in the last couple draft classes. Pico Armstrong was in that group too. So
Yeah,
they got some dudes. Like again, you're gathering the dice as many as you can, just so when you roll them, you're getting in your best odds to actually hit on somebody. So they unloaded a lot of contract. It wouldn't surprise me if they did go try and re-sign some of these dudes, like the Rizzos. I think has a really good chance to re-sign with the Cubs if they are so inclined to do that. But they still have, Patrick Wisdom and Ian Happ and Wilson Contreras is still there. They still
yeah,
got
Contreras.
guys that they can work around
Yeah.
and do something with. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're, right back into contention in a couple seasons. But boy, it would be tough to be a Cubs fan at this point, seeing all those dudes kind of vacating the premises.
I like your thoughts there. My biggest question is kind of what's going to come through the pipeline as far as pitching, and we've seen
Mhm.
that. That's kind of what the Royals are dealing with. Like, is it gonna? It's basically a coin flip. Are they going to pan out
Yes.
on one side, or are they not? I mean, that's kind of what you're dealing with. And
Yep.
I mean, at one point, this pitching staff was pretty disgusting, and then now it's like, ooh, that's kind of ugly. So,
And that's always
I
been the
like,
Cubs thing. Like they've always had a
yeah.
really like stud positional lineups, with the question mark is always lying in that the starting rotation. So that's really what's going to come down to, as is always is.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So that leads me to, because we talked about the Cubs and their kind of just disbanding of the entire starting roster.
Yep.
Rizzo goes over to the Yankees. They go get Joey Gallo. I mean, let's think about this lineup here. You got,
I'd rather not.
I saw it last night, but I'm just gonna go down the line. I
Yep.
mean, holy smokes, Gary Sanchez nukes first
Hmm.
base. Rizzo nukes hit one tonight for his first time appearance down in Miami.
Did he?
Uh, yeah, yeah,
Jesus, he's on a heater too. He's really cooking right now.
yeah. You got Glaber playing, I think, second or short right now.
Yep.
I mean, you got Ursula. The outfield is oh my god. The outfield is in left. I saw it was Gallo, going to be Gallo. Center field was kind of up in the air. I was thinking they were going to try to go get Buxton, honestly. I had
Yeah.
this weird feeling they were going to make a move for Buxton to solidify center field.
Yep.
But then you got right field and Judge. Stan's probably going to be your DH. You got Luke Voigt still there.
Hmm.
Like, good night, man. Like, this
Yep.
is honestly the Yankees of, like I said, when I was a kid. And I remember watching them on Halloween. They got Clemens, they got Pettit, they got, I mean, those lineups, man. What are
Hmm.
your thoughts on this Yankee squad? Kind of just, you know, good night. Steinbrenner pulling out a dad. I mean, he really did. He really did. Went to the old cards in the back, pulled out a
That's right.
dad card, and he went and did it.
I mean, obviously you hate to see it. This is definitely filed under the heading of things you hate to see, truly. Um, they do have a lot of names though. It's obviously they have names. I do wonder because Gallo has been hitting better lately, but you got to expect a 250 from Gallo, 250 from Judge, 240 from Stanton, a 230 from Gleyber Torres, a 220 from Gary Sanchez. These guys aren't on base guys. They're not hitting for average, but they do absolutely hit dongs all over the place, and especially you're adding Rizzo and Gallo to that short porch in right field. Get out of here. I mean, that's just they're going to hit 25 apiece in the second half between the two of them. So it's stupid what they're doing. It should be illegal, and I'm here for throwing every one of them in jail because of it. But I legitimately hate to see the Yankees doing good things ever, ever.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, when they were trading that, they're like, "Hey, we're planning on just these guys dominating at home, and then whatever happens on the road happens on the road.
Yep.
We're trading for our ballpark and just seeing what happens."
Hmm.
I mean, that was an incredible. Like, I think that honestly for me was the under, like, kind of. I think a lot of people let that fly under the radar. Like, not a lot of people realize they got Joey Gallo, and they also went out and got Anthony Rizzo, and
Yep.
I mean, that pitching staff is not terrible. They go out and get Andrew Heaney as well,
Yep.
from the Angels. I mean, that's not going to be a terrible, pitching rotation either. Their bullpen's pretty solid. Britton's coming back. Chapman's out there. I mean, they got some pretty good
Domingo
stuff. So,
Armand is a terrible human being, but he does pitch really well. You
yes,
you worry about the volatility of Jameson Tyone. I mean,
yes,
Garrett Cole has been a completely different pitcher after a spider tack.
yeah.
So you do that is the if you're going to get to the Yankees, let's do that starting rotation for sure. But if they're putting up 8 home runs a game, then maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And that's what I think is going to be exciting because playoff baseball, the atmosphere, you know what that is. And then you're starting to just throw in just Yahtzees over the fence.
Yep,
And I think if they can get there, they might actually push. So we'll have to see.
it'd be magical.
I don't want to, I don't want to predict it, but I'm calling a Yankees Dodgers World Series.
I don't think you're too hot of a take there. I think that's pretty reasonable at this point. It's tough to see the White Sox are doing some interesting things. That back of that bullpen now with Tepera and Kimbrel to go
Yep.
with Liam Hendricks and Michael Kopech, Andrew Bummer. I mean, they've got a really, really good back of the bullpen. Question marks again with the rotation, but if you've got five relievers that you can throw in and trust pitching 5 to 6 innings a night with Kopech being able to go multiple innings, maybe you don't need him to go. Maybe it's just turned into an opener situation with dudes behind them. So you know they're them and the Yankees are probably my favorites, but they as far as like if I'm betting on anybody, it's probably those two coming out of the AL. But you got to have a Goliath to get up a David. So give me all the Davids. I'm going to take all the Davids in my heart, and I'm going to put all my money on the Goliaths.
Yeah. And low key, I kind of am pulling for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah.
Um, because I like the youth that they've been able to put in place. They go out and get Barrios.
Hmm.
Um, I the Twins got a lot in return, and rightfully so. I mean, but do you think that was enough for the Blue Jays to kind of maybe make a late push to even get to the wild card? Or, I mean, I think I saw today they were potentially 9 games out of the first place, and I think they were 4 games out of the wild card.
Mm.
I'm wondering if that's enough to get them over because now they're returning to the Rogers Center. We know that that's a sandbox, and people just hit absolute bombs out of that. What are your thoughts on the Blue Jays? Do you think that they even got a magical chance to do anything?
I mean, they did go get Brad Hand, Joaquin Soria to kind of bolster up that bullpen a little bit as well. The starting rotation has big time question marks. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if Rue is doing the same as he's done the last couple of seasons. I haven't really paid attention to what he's done this year. Let me double check that real quick. Yeah, he's pretty average season for him.
Yeah.
But he's right now he's number two. Robbie Ray is doing nothing. And then obviously you've got Barrios to kind of headline that rotation. But that lineup is no joke. Vladito is an MVP candidate, if not the
Man.
favorite right now. Well, maybe not favorite. I think Shohei's got that wrapped up, um, but yeah, Vladito is going to carry that offense potentially through into the postseason and beyond. But I'd love to see it. They could definitely become the David that I start to root for, even though I hate the Blue Jays and their fans from the 2015 season so much. But
Yes.
it's a whole new season. No more Joey Bats there, no more Josh Donaldson, none of these a holes that
Yeah.
Brett Laurie can kick
Yes.
rocks and die in a. I shouldn't say that, but I don't like him either. So it's it could be somebody that I could root for to come after these Yankees and these Dodgers, but it'll be a long stretch to kind of get through them with that pitching staff for sure.
For sure. And they really are hoping that Nate Pearson pans out, and that dude throws some absolute flames, but
Yes.
he hasn't quite got to where consistency has been something we've seen from him quite regular. And I think he's still down in the minors. I don't think
Is he
he's made it
healthy?
up.
Last time he was hurt. Yeah, he's healthy now. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, still in AAA, trying to figure it out for sure.
I kind of think he's got like a Kopech type,
Yeah,
um, I guess, kind of mirroring kind of how he did, because Kopech struggled there for a while too, and then
sure.
kind of figured it out. So, but man, I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else we could talk? I mean, trades you want to talk about real quick before we sign off, or I mean, that
I
it honestly, I was going through and I'm like, man, we could talk about this, we could talk
oh
about
for
this
sure.
one. Was there anything else that was kind of big that maybe I didn't mention? The Starling Marte, I think, was kind of a big one for me.
Yeah,
Um,
that's going to be good for that lineup because they're just packed with 240 hitters that hit dongs. And
yeah,
Marte having such a great OBP year, it's going to be a big bolster to that lineup for sure. Low key, one of my favorite moves this trade deadline here for sure. The one that kind of, well, I guess there were two that really got me. The Eddie Rosario and Pablo Sandoval deal was very weird to me. Um, I love me some Kung Fu Panda, but I think he was traded and then immediately DFA'd. So it was a complete money dump. It was very interesting why the Braves were even interested in that. But you do you, Braves. I'm rooting for you as well. And the other one was the John Lester deal to St. Louis.
to St. Louis,
No idea.
yeah.
No idea why that's a thing. No idea.
Do you,
Say,
and I started kind of questioning, do you think they might use him as a roll out of the pen, maybe?
I mean, maybe. Yeah.
I just, he,
They're 7.5 games out. They're a -30 run differential. They could make a run. They're always in it because they're the damn Cardinals. But the fact that they bought somebody, even if it's as low as John Lester, it was very weird to me. I mean,
yeah,
do they have guys that they need to go get like developmental things? They've already got Adam Wainwright, Yadi Molina to kind of take guys under their wings. So the Lester deal just blew my mind. I don't understand it. I don't not even close to understanding that.
yeah. I had him in fantasy, and it popped up on my phone. I'm like, whoa, like what was that about? Yeah, that caught me too.
Yep.
Was there any surprises that you think didn't happen? Because one for me was Josh Donaldson.
Yeah.
Um, and that team obviously has imploded. And I think this was the year where they attempted to try to go and do everything they could to make a very, very competitive team, and
Yep.
it just blew up in their face. So I was surprised Donaldson didn't get the move.
For sure. Obviously Trevor Story. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
unless the Rockies are planning to back up the Brinks truck to him in a couple and at the end of the year, it doesn't make any sense why they wouldn't move him either. From a Royals standpoint, I have no idea why Michael A. Taylor is still in the Royals organization. I mean, he can make a decent. I mean, the Braves. Why are you going for Eddie Rosario when Michael A. Taylor could actually provide you defense in the outfield at that point? Just line him and Soler and any of these bums that you're pulling in to roam the outfield. Michael A. Taylor can cover a lot of ground and make up for a lot of bad defense. I don't understand why why he's still here. But
We always
whatever.
make a trade deadline move with the Oakland Athletics, and I'm gonna be
Yep.
real with you. That was my Oakland Athletics move. I
Yeah.
thought Michael Taylor to the Oakland Athletics was gonna happen,
Hmm.
because we dealt Mike Minor, Jake Diekman. I mean, the list goes on, and I thought that Minor did Minor go there?
I don't think he got traded to the A's from the Rangers a couple
The
years
rain.
ago.
Okay, okay,
Or was that
okay.
last year? He did pitch for them recently, but it was from the Rangers.
Yeah, yeah, okay. But yeah, we always make that weird like trade deadline move with the Oakland Athletics, and I
Yep.
thought for sure it was going to be Taylor. And
It's a quota to fill. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah, and it just it didn't happen because I thought
Uh-huh.
that was one where you would see a young guy come up, an Oliveris or somebody like that, and
Yep.
that's who would fill that spot. But I mean, they didn't do it. They did
Yep.
not do it. So, or even a Barlow. I mean, that was like our guy. Like I
Yeah.
envisioned him because of how much relief pitching. Like Craig Kimball's return blew me away. And yes, he's a
Yeah.
closer. Yes, he's a veteran. We know what he's got, but man, I feel like Barlow could have pulled something like that too. And
Between his controllability and the fact that he has been more consistent than Kimbrel has over the last 1.5 seasons or whatever, yeah, totally makes sense why he would be hauling more. But again, it's probably Dayton Moore hovering over that accept button. He says, "We're going to need Scott Barlow when we win the World Series next year," and then he hits reject, and then he never answers the phone anymore. Is
yeah,
what that is.
I tell you that I could see him honestly. You know, I, could I be wrong here? But he's got MLB The Show pulled up, and he plugs in the trades that are called and offered to him. And if that red bar hits and it says "Do not do it," he's like,
Yep.
"Nope, we're not making that move. Let him know.
Well,
Let him
even at
know."
that point, maybe it's like we're gonna need a bit more. If it's just like a smidge too close to the other team, then they're like, I don't think that's gonna work. I don't think. Yeah, give me more. I need more than that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, man. And
And
the final thing I was gonna say is I'm surprised where the Brewers are at in that division.
yeah,
They really did not do anything. I like their team. I like how it's set up. They go and get Adams from the Tampa Bay and plug
yeah,
him there. But they didn't do anything at the trade deadline, and they got a good rotation, but maybe needed another piece.
hmm
Bullpen can always be something to be added to. I was really surprised they didn't make a move.
yeah. And they did. I mean, they did go get Willie Adamas like a month ago, and he's been
Adamas,
absolutely nails
Adamas.
the
Sorry.
last few years or the last few months. But yeah, you kind of expected to see a little bit more, but they've kind of got the makings. They've got with Hader, Devin Williams out of the bullpen, you kind of got that back part kind of locked down. Burns, Woodruff, Brett Anderson are all pretty. Freddie Peralta's having a great year, so you probably feel pretty good about their three or four guys there as well. And then it's all about the bats, and I mean, it just depends on who shows up to the ballpark that night, and we'll have to see that it runs. But it's as long as it's not the damn Cardinals coming out of the Central, I'm fine, and I can absolutely get on board with rooting for the Brewers. They were one bad injury to can't think of his damn name. Um,
Lorenzo Kane,
why can't I think of Yelich? Jesus, one
Christian
bad
Yelich.
one bad injured Yelich a year or two ago that really kept them out of it, and really
Yeah,
that's the reason why they could have absolutely been in the mix for the NLCS last year. So
yeah,
you know. I can 100% get on board with going for a team like the Brewers and beer. I like beer, so
yeah,
let's go.
for sure, for sure. Well, Josh, man, I appreciate you coming on. As always, this was incredible. I'm sure we could continue talking for a lot longer because there were tons and tons of moves we didn't even really
Yep,
talk about.
yep.
But man, I really do appreciate your time. I understand that you have a family and you're doing your stuff now. So I really do appreciate you coming on and giving me the opportunity and the beat and letting everybody know what's going on,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah,
So
of course. I appreciate you having me. Look forward to seeing what you got in store for us between all your channels. I'm a fan, so I
thank
look
you
forward to every time we talk. But definitely every time some content drops with you, then I look forward to it for sure.
very much appreciated. And you guys know how I wrap this out. As always, I appreciate you checking out the Beat of KC and have a good day.